Welcome and thanks for joining us. I am Daniel Botella, EMEA Sales Director, and together with me is Andrew Mason, EMEA Technology Sales Advisor. Okay. Today we are going to talk about the different challenges that a modern CSP needs to take into consideration to build a cloud storage solution and how Virtuozzo can help them. The conversation will focus on three concepts that need to take into account when talking about a modern storage solution. It's going to be sovereignty, performance, and cost. The conversation will end with an Q&A session, so feel free to bring your question either in the chat, either in the Q&A session. Okay? Andrew? Move to the next one. Okay, I'm going to start with an introduction about Virtuozzo. Some of you already know, but it's good to present the company. Virtuozzo has over 24 years of experience in virtualization and more than a decade developing cutting-edge storage technologies. We are not a newcomers. We have built a solid foundation backed by 157 patents, and we have presence in 87 countries, working with close to 700 partners across the globe. We are a European company fully compliant with GDPR, with headquarters in Switzerland and the UK, giving our customer peace of mind when it comes to data sovereignty and privacy. Technologically, we offer a software-defined storage that support S3 object storage, xSPs blocks, and NFS file system. We are a production-ready and fully supported OpenStack solution, hyper-convergent infrastructure that brings together automation and performance in a turnkey solution. And both we provide traditionally and next-generation virtualization with a flexible and affordable license model. Now it's time to talk about numbers. Today, we manage more than 700,000 virtual environments. We have more than 2,000 clusters in our customer on-premise. We run and manage 1 exabyte of storage in use, and our storage solution can scale until 100 petabytes. Okay, who are your customers today? Our customers are coming from the hosting and ISP companies. We also serve to cloud service provider and enterprise ISV companies. We are proud to be making the cloud more accessible, flexible, and affordable for everyone. Okay, Andrew, move to the next one. When we talk about modern cloud storage, everything comes down to three fundamental pillars: sovereignty, performance, and cost. Let's start with sovereignty. This is about where your data is stored, who controls it, and whether it complies with local regulation like GDPR in Europe. It's a key concern for organizations that handle sensitive information or operate across the borders. Then the second topic to take into consideration is performance. How quickly can you access and use your data, specifically in distributed or hybrid environments? In today's world, speed and reliability are not optional, they are expected. And finally, cost. Are you paying for storage that you are not really using? Are you facing hidden costs to retrieve your data? These hidden costs can add up and quickly and make scaling inefficient. The reality is that most cloud solutions force you to choose one of two of these pillars, but rarely it's having all the three. At Virtuozzo, we believe you shouldn't have to compromise. We build a platform to ensure sovereignty, performance, and cost efficiency all come together. Move to the next one, Andrew. At this point, we want to ask you a key question. Why settle for compromise? When we think about cloud service, we usually turn to the big mainstream provider. But the reality is that while they offer some benefits, they often force us to sacrifice essential elements. Let's break it down. Traditional cloud provider may deliver data sovereignty and competitive costs. However, they often fall short on critical area performance, and that can directly impact user experience, scalability, and operational efficiency. This is exactly where Virtuozzo comes in. As a true alternative cloud, with Virtuozzo, there is no need to choose between one feature or the other. It offers sovereignty, performance, and cost efficiency without any compromise. So now my colleague Andrew is going to explain how Virtuozzo makes this possible.
All right. Thank you, Dani, and good afternoon, everybody. All right, so as Dani had mentioned, our Virtuozzo software-defined storage supports both block storage, S3 object storage, and also NFS storage, which you deploy on commodity hardware in your local data centers for either a public cloud use or a private cloud use, whichever is your requirement. So in today's session, we're going to focus primarily on our S3 object cloud storage, and we'll also touch on our hyperconverged volume block storage as well throughout the presentation. Now, so our highly scalable and performant S3 cloud storage adapts itself well to consolidating use cases, and we'll talk about these as we go through the presentation. All right, so starting at the bottom, one of the use cases there being your backup and archive storage for the likes like Commvault and Veeam, which have high throughput requirements and large capacity and retention requirements, but do not need necessarily very expensive SSD type devices. And sort of moving up, you have your semi-structured and unstructured data types, your files, your documents, your videos, images, and audio files, which are used by various applications or simply archived. So for example, there could be applications doing video analytics or quality assurance applications using voice recording or even Spark workloads on semi-structured CSV type files. But then you also have your high-performance structured data in your modern data lake architectures today. And these are for the likes of Trinode, Dremio, Vertica, and even Spark for that matter. And in this structured data there, what makes it possible are the open file formats, as you can see there, for example, Iceberg, Data Lake, or Hoodie. But in terms of Iceberg, for example, it enables sharing of data across analytics applications by providing the transactional integrity of the data within that. And then they use open format files such as Parquet for columnar format data and also compressed storage. So then we're able to consolidate these multiple workloads within the cluster. So an example of the high-performance analytics is, for example, OpenText's Vertica Analytics database, where they traditionally used direct storage and experienced, obviously, scalability and performance restrictions in a traditional architecture. So what they've done is with their Eon mode, they've separated or detached the database from the storage and using high-performance S3 storage for storing the actual database data itself, which requires high throughput and using Iceberg and Parquet formats, for example. All right. So our Virtuozzo S3 and software-defined storage delivers impeccable price performance capabilities, and we achieve up to 6 times better price performance for S3 storage throughput than other competitive solutions on the market today. Here we actually achieve a consistent 10.5 gigabyte per second and 4.3 gigabyte per second throughput for the actual node, surpassing all the competitors. And this is very well suited to the high-performance analytics data lake type applications. Now, from a S3 backup storage perspective, we've achieved 2.5 times faster S3 backup throughput than Ceph by using HDD stores with cached NVMe for the metadata itself. And in an entire HDD-based cluster, we've also achieved 1.9 times faster throughput compared to this configuration on Ceph. And these testings we have done on the exact same hardware. So if you're achieving 2.4 times the actual throughput on the same hardware, you are gaining incredible cost savings, or you need less hardware to actually run the platform. From a block IO VM volume perspective, we've actually achieved on erasure coding, we've achieved 7.2 times more random write and 3.9 times more random read performance compared to Ceph. Again, this testing is done on all flash on the exact same hardware to actually compare the capabilities of the systems. So both from an object storage or cloud storage perspective and from a VM volume perspective, we provide very compelling price performance capabilities on the platform. So cost efficiency is also achieved by being able to actually utilize up to 90% of the usable capacity in S3 erasure coded pools, by the way we reduce the overheads and the fragmentation restrictions, which enables you to actually run on less hardware and lower your costs. And this also enables a better utilization for churn heavy S3 workloads. So this is where you have a very high rate of puts and gets objects being loaded and deleted, which you can find in analytics type upload or platforms, or even in backup applications with incremental backups. And then lastly, we'll talk about our automatic data healing in the event of a node failure in the cluster. Enables the cluster to auto-heal itself to additional resources and nodes in the clusters and capacity, and streamline this process. And we also have a simplified automated disk replacement capability, and these combined reduce operational management, so the platform keeps itself up and running and reduces your operational costs. All right, from a scalability perspective, you can scale up by adding drives to the actual storage cluster nodes, so you get a capacity scale, or you can scale linearly for workload and performance as we go across the screen there by adding nodes to the cluster. So you can scale from terabyte size to over 100 petabytes and up to over 100 gigabytes per second of actual throughput on a Virtuozzo storage cluster. So incredibly scalable platform. As you saw, the per node input and get input rates of 10.4 and 4.3 gigabyte per second explain as to how we achieve these high gigabyte per second throughput ratios. So while scaling linearly, adding nodes to the platform, the cluster does auto balancing or non-disruptive balancing to maintain and will get the cluster to an optimal state and maintain an optimal state within the cluster for best performance, which obviously improves your total cost of ownership. But also we have non-disruptive re-encoding, where you can actually, as you grow the cluster, expand the erasure coding from, for example, a 3+2 encoding to a 5+2 or a 7+2 encoding. So as you add those additional nodes, you can widen the erasure encoding. So what this does for you, it gives you a higher usable capacity on the same physical same physical devices, same physical storage devices. So essentially you gain a higher usable capacity, which is again a cost saving. So you get more capacity out of the physical platform as it scales, and you get the linear performance, and that scales with the platform itself. So you have a predictable platform from scalability and a rebalancing and optimal level state as the cluster operates throughout its life cycle. All right, so from a features perspective, we'll just do a very quick overview of the key features of our feature-rich S3 object storage platform. So starting at top, it is an Amazon S3 compliant sort of user and access management, where you have your ACLs and policy buckets to protect access to actual objects and buckets within there. You also have the very useful capabilities of assigning quotas to either users or buckets. So when you are sharing the platform out for public cloud use cases or multiple departments, for example, you can establish quotas for the individual users or the buckets. And you can also set limits for the operations that they can execute, operations per second, so the puts, gets, deletes, etc., individually or consolidated operations number, and also for the egress bandwidth that they can actually consume on the platform itself. So you can actually manage the resources within the platform. So you also have lifecycle policies, so you can actually set policies so that when objects reach a specific age or based on a time frame, you can actually do expiration and delete these objects automatically. So we're able to maintain and manage the actual data within the platform with a lifecycle policy. And then you also have the event notifications, which enables an event-driven application workflow capability. So if an object is added to the storage or changed or modified on the storage, the consumer application is notified of this event and can take the appropriate action based on that data that's been added to the platform. So across all of these, we have the access audit logs. So you can do audit log reporting for your audit reporting processes, and you can actually see and trace what has been going on with objects and see who's been doing what on the platform against the different objects. So you have a traceability of the access and usage of the data itself. We also have the AWS or Amazon S3 compliant or standard cross-region replication, which is simply the ability from an S3 bucket to be able to establish replication, to replicate the objects out to a different S3 storage, doesn't have to be ours, or even to a public cloud. So you can actually distribute that storage or copy it elsewhere for maybe a level of protection, basic level of protection. But what's very important in our cluster is actually the last one I'm going to talk about here, are the storage classes. So you saw the consolidation of the multiple use cases. We talked from backup to your semi-structured, unstructured type data processing analytics, and going up to structured data, high-performance analytics processing. So what's important here, you can have multiple storage classes. You can have 4 tiers of storage in the actual storage cluster, so that you can then allocate the right workloads or the right users to the actual storage classes that are required to suit their workload. So basically you're using the best cost performance storage for each type workload, and overall in your consolidated environment, reducing the costs of your actual platform. All right, and then from a data protection perspective, we have obviously the base object protection, where your S3 objects can be protected with versioning. So what happens in that case is that when an object is created there, if that object is updated or deleted, it always just creates a new version, maintaining the version list of the historic version, so that one can always revert back to those. And then you have an object lock, where an application or use type can actually lock an object once it's there, so nobody can actually modify or tamper with that object. And there's even the further legal hold, where a hold can be placed on X amount of data or X amount of objects for legal compliance processing requirements. So with this, you actually get protection against accidental removal of objects, or even ransomware attacks. So the object storage is obviously designed to protect itself and reduce the needs for external backups. We have data at rest encryption, as well as data in transit encryption, to prevent data leaks and data being actually stolen. And also the cluster has built-in firewalling to prevent untrusted sources from accessing the cluster itself. And the important one to mention here, though, is the multi-site geo-replication. This is a Virtuozzo-specific implementation, different to the cross-region replication. And with this technology, you can then replicate your bucket objects to up to 4 different Virtuozzo clusters. And the major difference here is it doesn't only replicate just the objects. The metadata and access and object policies are replicated with that data, duplicating it entirely at the other locations. So this gives you a good level of protection, let's say protection in terms of a local site loss, but also enables you to have local access to the data in other regions. So for example, if you've got users dispersed, you could have your different regions where the data is just constantly replicated to them, and the local user access occurs within those regions. So you then reduce your cross-region access for high bandwidth requirements. So you then end up saving costs. All right, so with Virtuozzo hybrid infrastructure and our hyper-converged infrastructure deployments, we have several options or ways you can actually deploy the clusters itself. So being a hyper-converged infrastructure, you can have a compute-only cluster. So what that would mean is you have your VM compute space, your CPUs, your RAM, etc., and you have your software-defined Virtuozzo block volume storage, which services the actual VM volumes. Now, you can also deploy it as a storage-only cluster. So in this sense, all you're providing is, for example, maybe only S3. That's a cluster servicing S3. That's a workload type that you want to deploy or provide a cloud platform for S3 cloud storage. Or you can actually combine the two, because it's a very flexible and open architecture. So you can actually combine that compute capability with the actual storage cluster capability into a single consolidated platform, which can actually reduce total hardware requirements based on what you're trying to achieve, and support the multiple tiers as you would need to within an environment. All right, our Virtuozzo hybrid infrastructure, hyper-converged efficiency, enables you, reduces the overheads in the environment and reduces your cost. This is because if you look at those even the different deployments as compute storage or combined computed storage, you do not have any separate vendor storage systems, SAN switches, or teams needed to actually manage these, which reduce your costs. You have a single infrastructure platform across those use cases with a unified management, which simplifies your operational management and reduces that operational cost of the platform itself. So when you combine these, though, with the use of commodity hardware. All we require are commodity servers with the internal storage devices or attached JBOD storage devices, which is removes vendor lock-in. So combining the use of low-cost commodity hardware with the ability to consolidate the compute and the storage in the cluster to gain that footprint reduction and down cooling reduction. So combined with the operational efficiencies, you can save up to 50% of your overall storage costs, delivering an outstanding total cost of ownership. All right, one of the really, let's say, useful concepts and important concepts within Virtuozzo hybrid infrastructure, our hyper-converged infrastructure, is its secure multi-tenancy. And that's why in the beginning we talked about being used for a public cloud or private cloud type deployment. So in one environment is deployed, you have your different tenants, be those different users or different organizations or different departments, and they each have their tenants to which they use the secure multi-tenant self-service portal to actually log into their environment. And for each of those environments within your storage cluster, if it's just a storage cluster or storage and compute, you provide them the resources that they actually require and the right storage class to suit their varying workloads. Because an engineering department might have a high performance requirement, while a data analytics could be ad hoc reporting, which maybe does not need that same level of performance. So you can use the different tiers and quality and classes of storage to allocate these individually to your different tenants as they need. And you can then also manage the capacity and the actual workload on the system, because you have the ability to create those quotas for user quotas for the buckets, and also for the users themselves, and then also limit the bandwidth and the operations on a per user perspective. So you get a multi-tenant environment where you can have those multiple classes of storage and the ability to manage the quality of service for the different tenants. And this also expands to our compute cluster capabilities. In for example, S3 storage and for example, those analytics data processing environments, you also have the ability with the cross-tenant bucket access for the tenants to then be able to share data or collaborate across the actual different tenants. All right, with that, we'll hand over back to Donnie.
Thank you, Andrew. At Virtuozzo, we believe that data sovereignty is not an optional thing. It's a strategic necessity. This slide summarizes how our solution is designated to enable true digital sovereignty. First, we highlight our foundation. Headquarters is in Switzerland with operational roots in Singapore. We strictly adhere to the GDPR and other local data privacy regulation. This ensures your data is always protected under trusted jurisdiction. Second, we offer full control through local deployment options. Our platform can run on regional cloud infrastructure or on-premise private clouds, giving customers complete control over the environment of their data. Third, we eliminate hiding dependencies. There is no reliance on hyperscaler or third country data transfer. This reduces legal risk, prevent vendor lock-in, and ensure greater transparency. And finally, we empower our partners and customers to achieve true regional cloud independence. Our infrastructure supports sovereign data storage aligned with national, regional, or industry-specific requirements. In short, Virtuozzo doesn't just deliver technology. We provide a solid foundation for a truly sovereign and customer-controlled cloud. Just to finish the webinar, we are going to move into the Q&A part. Please feel free to add your question either on the chat, either on the Q&A session. And we have posted the email from me and from Andrew in the chat. So you can, if you have any other question, you can reach us via email.
Okay, I'm just looking at some questions that are coming in. One question we have about multi-site is only for objects, built-in feature, or third-party company. Yeah, so the S3 object storage multi-site replication, or the cross-region applications, those are based on the S3 object storage. In terms of the block volume storage for VMs, we use third-party replication products, for example, such as Coriolis for the actual data replication.
Thank you, Tatiana. You have on the chat a link to request a demo in case you want to have a more deeper conversation. Thank you very much for your time and for the attendance to the webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you. you, Donnie. Thank you, everybody.